Hey, first part of the A-pillar done. Woo! So you can see the outer original donor is on an angle, a funny shape, and of course I needed a vertical flange for the hinges, both in this direction as well as this direction. So, excuse my light. So I've completed the inner part of that up until the windowsill level. So a whole lot more from here, the top of this all the way to the same height as that. Still needs to be completed, and the angle of the front, and it'll be possibly tilting in half a degree as well. So there's a lot more to go, but I needed a foundation which to build off. So if you can imagine a bigger, wider version of this that's going to span from there all the way around to the side, or a wider version of this, that still has to come on this flange here, and it'll come out around back, a big hat channel, and go all the way down there and all the way up, and also be at that windscreen angle. So there's a lot more to work out, which I haven't done yet. I just needed somewhere to start from. So that closes out basically the inner panel and gives me a flange to attach to there, and the other one will attach to the body there. So first bit done. I've already done both sides. It was all spot welded in. That's my big old Australian spot welder, Porter Spot Junior, 230 to 240 volts. It has to run off a 15 amp plug. That's the same one my welders plug into, not your conventional 10 amp. That thing is so powerful that it will burn through these layers completely. If you there's no timer or anything, none of this fancy stuff. It's all manual. You basically clamp the two together, and this is called resistance welding. Pardon me. And that's where it differs from plug welding. Plug welding and spot welding are 200% different processes. One is just you've got a hole in one and you fill it with weld. That's a plug weld. Nothing to do with a spot weld. That is resistance welding. You're creating an arc between the two. It burns red hot, and the moment it starts to, you feel it sink in, that's when you stop, because there's no time or anything on this. It's big old-fashioned heavy as. So that's why I put the flange in, but also to add a bit more vertical strength. And it was a tricky little piece. You wouldn't think so, but this is not a straight line either. It goes up and then comes back that way, so that all had to be put into the flange. Anyway, good progress. I'm happy that I've got something to work from, and it's a step that I need to take before I can go on. So the hat channel to go next over the top of all that, and I'll design that now. Alright, next step. So you have seen how I made that inner panel. I don't know if I mentioned it, but also how much this goes inwards. So 30 mil. So this door seal from the donor went straight across, but I needed this door seal to go narrower. You can see that taper that I've put in there. There you go, that's a better view. So that there's enough room for the hinges to be in there without needing a joggle to go for the seal. I hope that makes sense. Anyway, because it'll make sense later. So next phase was making up the next part. So I've done the same step die as all the rest for where the seal sits, and then clamped my was there enough room here maybe? Anyway, made this level on the outside because that's how my template was made. Line it up with the A for A-pillar, and now all I have to do is mark that and then move it in 5 millimeters or 3/16, because this is still an inner skin. There will be, on the outside, there will still be the body that goes over the top, laminating basically that even further. So that's still all to come. And so once this has been tipped, it'll be basically a hat channel. The outside I can make up, and then I have to make up a new inside panel to go from here. It gets more complicated because you start getting the taper of the inside of the windscreen pillar and everything as well. So there's still a lot to take into account with what's coming up. So I'll be making that next step now. So more on the A-pillar. It gives you a bit of an idea of the height of the door and everything, because that there now represents the top of the door. The roof will still sit from the gutter up, higher than that, but eventually we'll have all 6 pillars in place, and then we can finally start making the doors. I still, of course, I've still got to do this join here, the same as that one there, and then from there down on top, come down and over the top of there, that represents the top of the frame, remember? So the door seal will come down, has to curve and everything to match the frame, and that whole piece in between still has to be covered. So still a lot of work ahead. Slowly, but we're getting there. Alrighty, so I've got this folded back. Now you'll notice that it is tilted back more than the body shape here, because at this point here, the leading edge of the door, we now start to transition. Now you might be able to see that black line. That's the one I drew up, and that goes back to the grill, and that's the angle. You can see it here. As you can see, it's dramatically different to that, but I want to have a transition over this 100mm or 4 inches between that the width of the A-pillar is below the window line. It's nothing to do with the shape going up. The other thing that threw me, I wasn't sure which way to go about it, but you can see that I've tilted this one all the way out. This one is parallel with the body, to make sure the door is square to the pillar, because the door from here back of course follows that, and that's what I've done with all the pillars. The pillars aren't all just straight out like that, they're all 90 degrees to the outside of the body line. Now I wasn't sure at the moment. I've gone 90 degrees to the side of the, don't confuse that one, that's the expansion gap, to the hood sides or the bonnet line. So that's there. So that's the maximum that I would suddenly go from this body line to that body line. I'm not going to just do a crease, I want to curve that around. You've got to remember that this is the inner pillar, so there's still the skin to go around, and I can adjust that and how much curve and everything I want. But I think it still makes sense to have this square to the line down the side of the bonnet. I've puzzled over this quite some time, deciding which way it needs to go. So at the moment I'm about to draw this to make this side, the front side of the A-pillar, turn and then match up with this one here. So I thought the worst, if I want to have clearance in case I decide to come right in here as hard as I can and then curve into the body from that point in there. I've always wanted to make a cross here, because that's so much bigger than conventional, than the original 32. I want to keep this as narrow as possible. So I might as well make this fold here at the minimum possible, and if it turns out the transition needs to be out a little bit more before it curves around to the body, then all I do is that cap that I'm going to put over the top of this can be spaced out. Let's hope I've got that right. But as I said, if you do it all the way in and I make that inner pillar, I've got room to space that in or out from there. I've got a 5mm gap here, and then I'm going for maximum on the 5mm gap there as well, plus in case I need to come out from there. I hope that makes sense. It's hard to explain when it's not clear in your own head. How's that? Because I really don't know what's going to look best later on. So I've got to build in what I need. It's hard work. It's trying to figure it out. So much time. But if you stuff it up, I don't want to go cutting it apart and starting it again. All right, I've completed the A-pillar to this stage. This is what I knew had to be, because I was still struggling of the final design for, don't forget, most of this is inside the existing A-pillar that's on the Willys. So the original Willys pillar will fit around this. And have the bead in it for the belt line mould in it and the step down the bottom. So obviously I still have to continue it down here. I have to shape around here, come along there, come up that side just like I've done here, and then build a whole door seal and everything that joins the two, fill the gap in there, and there's a long way to go. But sometimes I find if you can't picture how something's going to work, at least build what you do know is going to have to be there, and then you have to work around. So what's this showing here is that from this line here, which is the windowsill line, the windscreen angles up like that. So I'm keeping the Willys standard windscreen angle. I think it's about 3 degrees. I've got it all written down. And so now this piece, couldn't have done it in one anyway, so it will slope back up on that angle. It'll then come back this way, and that's what I'm working out right now. Is I've got to think of which windscreen run I'm going to do, because I'm not going to do a separate frame with a fold out windscreen, which is the original had. I want a pinch welded type seal, just like my truck has. So I've got to know which seal I'm going to run, how deep that is, how much I have to put a step in for it, according to the depth and everything it sits on. Unfortunately, when you look up the seals, they only give you a couple of dimensions and they don't give you all the dimensions. And I don't want to go ordering a whole feet of the stuff when I'm not even sure how much I'm going to need yet. So that's going to be the next phase, is incorporating the angle back and then coming across to meet what will be the pinch weld there. So this is the pillar. So I'm replacing, you can see that bit of old timber and that hanging out and a little bit of that inner flange. So rather than having a fold out windscreen like this, which is what this had, I will put a pinch weld inside of here. So I've got to put a dog leg in, and the piece I'm making now, this will fit over that pillar that I've been making. So this is the angle that I've got to incorporate, and then I've got to come across and then come straight across behind that step I need for the seal to sit in. I don't know if that makes it clear, because it's hard to describe something when you haven't got 100% in your own brain. All right, welcome to another episode. No, not an episode, but an update on the A-pillar. So as you can see, there it's as far as at the moment that I think I can confidently build it. So you can see this is going to be, I mean, eventually welded, fully welded, stitch welded or plug welded, whatever it takes to get that in solidly. This will all be, obviously when the dash is out, this will be spot welded together. And so I've got all my hinge points in. This black line here is the window line for the window. As you can see, it continues there and all the way across there. So what's left of to do on the A-pillar? Obviously this still has to tie down to the top, eventually the top of the frame. That's what this represents. The frame will be inside a bit more. This will be the bottom of the door sill, which is sitting hard on top of the chassis or the frame. Now, if you're wondering, see the big curve? It is nowhere near square. Where's my square? There we go. As you can see, nothing like square. So that big taper, if you look down at those texture marks on the concrete, that's actually the side of the body, the hood sides, is what that angle. So one of them is straight because the original's straight, but we are entertaining the idea of putting a slight curve to it, which is the same curve as is in the rest of the body, because we're not doing a trifold, so we're not limited to keeping that straight. The awkwardness would be those long louvers that run horizontally would have to also curve with it, and that is not an easy thing. You'd have to stretch the lip all the way around from one side to the other, or shrink the inside, or either way, it's a lot of work, but it may be something I'll do. The reason why is a tiny little mark down there. I've only got about 10mm or 3/8 of clearance to the side of the alternator hanging off the engine on the opposite side. I've actually got more room here. By putting that slight curve in it, otherwise this will be the only flat panel on the entire car. But it also gains me 19mm or 3/4 of an inch extra. So suddenly we've gone from 10mm to 29mm. So that would definitely be most welcomed for that point of view. So what's left? What is left is, and don't forget this is all inside the original, this will all be laminated basically by the rest of the actual pillar that has the body features in it. This angle here, and you can see a bit more of it up here, that is the actual windscreen angle. It's at just over 3.5 degrees, or 3.6 to be exact. That is what's on the existing vehicle, and that will come all the way down to here. This here is actually the top of the cowl. So I'm going to build, because it didn't have one, it had the whole windscreen or windshield folded out on this. I'm going to build a frame that's going to go across from there all the way across the other side, with a curve in it, like the stock cowl has, obviously a lot wider, 460mm wider. So that's got to pick up a fixed window. I'm not going to do a hinge out window. I'm going to do like I think a 32 Ford already had fixed windows, and so I've got to decide where everything goes. So this is where your window line is. This is the top of the cowl where it comes up and starts going over. Then there'll be a kick up, and then it'll step in, and then a pinch weld will pick up the actual glass. So the rubber has to be known. It has to sit on a step and then have a kick up where this panel will, when this is completed, will come across and meet that, and then the back of this pillar will come across, go across, and so you actually have triple layer up the inside of the A-frame, and that will also be tilting in slightly, unlike what's up the back there, so it'll have a tilt to it. So there's so much to think about. I don't know if I can do this one-handed. This is some surface rust that's ended up on these panels. These haven't been touched since I was working on the truck back in, what's that, 2022. So they've been sitting there. So this is Ranix by Bondall, it's an Australian product, Rust Busters, but basically it's phosphoric acid. I'm just straight neat. You can see I've already done this bit here. So I'm not sure if I can do this one-handed or not. You can see it coming off. And this is just a, I think it's a stainless steel scourer that just from the supermarket for cleaning your pots and pans. That's all I'm using. So I've just done that neat. You can see how quickly this comes off. And you don't want to let it dry on there. So you grab an old rag. I usually forgot to do it beforehand. I usually just dampen the rag with a little bit of water and then I quickly wipe it off. There you go. There's your before and after. So Ranex or phosphoric acid. It's all the same stuff. It'll say it in there somewhere, but anyway, this works well. If you're in Oz, Bunnings. I buy it by the 4 litre jug. Well, it's funny, I'm just staring at this, thinking of what to say, and suddenly I had visions of when I was in New York and the Chrysler building. So this A-pillar is now complete from there down to obviously where it finishes, but it still needs to go that last bit. The reason why I didn't include it at the time is because I went as far as this was straight before this curve started, because all that has to be still worked out. And also on this side, you can see how that steps back. So I'm going to make a piece that follows that, and then it will eventually be welded to the top of the chassis rails, which will go down the side there. So that's where it stops as it is. So I don't think I've recorded that, I've made the inner A-pillars as well. So you can see that one there. So that is, this face here is where the actual windscreen or windshield in the States glass sits. That rubber is part of this pinch weld. So don't forget, all of this will be covered. The only part of this whole entire A-pillar that will be seen is this one face here where the hinges are. So the body will come out here, step forward after it's come past 5 millimeters, step forward back this way, come back out again, and then the skin wraps around here, goes this way, steps back in, and then joins that pinch weld as well. So this pinch weld up the A-pillar is going to be 3 layers thick. I'm modelling this of what my 48 truck had stock, that also had an inner pillar which was then skinned by the body, and the donor had the same thing. So I'm just following that practice along using the same gauge metals to do. So what is this Chrysler building look-alike curve here for? Well, that's actually the start of the cow. So don't forget, everything's going to be 5 millimeters off this inner pillar, but that is actually where the cow is going to come across, and then it goes up here to the A-pillar. So this is just that transitional period where the A-pillar comes here, and then the outer face of the A-pillar that you actually see will be outside of this, and this is going to be the join between the hood sides or front quarters come up and then tuck in, and they'll sit here. I don't know yet how I'm going to attach those front hood sides, which are going to be fixed, but need to be bolting off to the skin that will come around the A-pillar here, because you can see it's quite a way far back from the A-pillar. Do I leave an access thing here and bolt all the way back, or do I just put an inner panel that will then bolt to the front face of this? That's what I'll work out later, but that's so far down the track. But I keep the possibilities open at this stage of either attaching back here at the edge of the panel or attaching here by stepping in and back across again. So we'll wait and see what happens with that. So yeah, it's good to finally get a bit of it looks like either the carcass of a whale or a ship with the ribs. But welcome to Tombstone. So yeah, so that's A, B and C pillar. That's the rest of the A-pillar there. So I'm about to finish fitting to that. I've only just welded on the inner A-pillar that I've made, and therefore that completes that. So next bit is to do the panel along here, and then I might look into actually securing up, before I start hanging doors, the panel for the windscreen as well as above and below. So because that's all going to be covered over by the sheet metal later on, but there'll be a structure running from one side to the other. So yeah, we'll see what the future brings on that. I'll make those decisions and what's needed, because I want to make sure this is quite rigid now, and it's even before I've attached it, taken the last bit of play out through here, which I'll add next. So the B pillars definitely need support until they get the structure across the top to tie them together, and I'm going to have to do some corner bracing on that just to give it that bit of extra support. Anyway, thought I'd get you up to date and see if I can get around to posting some of this. Alright, just thought I'd show the finished A-pillar. So I've continued this all the way down to what will be the bottom of the door seal or top of the chassis. So this cutout here is because this panel is going to continue all the way back and then round out here, clearing the seatbelt inertia reel pocket, and so all that has to be created still. But as you can see, I've got my hinge pockets all in there. I had to change the bolt spacing on this one, otherwise basically the bolt would start coming out because of this turn, so I had to move that inwards. So that's why that one is now a different pattern compared to, you can see this one is further out. Because this hinge also sticks out further from the body, because the hinge here is exactly vertical, and as you can see the door pillar curves in, and so therefore this hinge sits out more, which is some of them, they stuck out, even standard, it stuck out about this much, but I'll be fairly minimal. I think it's about 25 mil and this one's about 15 or something like that. So I'm hoping that I'm correct. I've made the hinge as close as possible. That's why this one's in the belt line, so it's less obvious. Because I don't understand why they need to be sticking out so far. One thing is to keep them all vertical, but even their closest one of cars of this era was sticking out a lot. So gee, I hope I haven't missed anything. I can't logically see why the door hinge point needs to be out here somewhere, but I guess time will tell when I make the door frame. At worst, and that's why I've done it this way regardless, I can make an extension on the hinge, so make the hinge plates longer and I can just move it out later should that be, but I wanted to create it as close as possible with the hinge point right just outside the door skin to make sure that all that will work. So yes, the A-pillar is done. The other one is about to go on as well. So yeah, happy with that. And I'll go on with making the pieces that join these two together next. Another project down, another piece completed. That's little by little, it'll get there.